Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, who is right here, I think, from Talk's International Department, of course. Isabel?
Morning. Can we talk this Syria asylum situation first? Because I'm really exercised by this. So Yvette Cooper announced yesterday that there's going to be a pause on asylum claims from Syrians. I just want to examine what that actually means, because people might be imagining that what it means is the UK is not going to accept any more Syrians coming over seeking refuge. That's completely untrue. Because if you think about it, it's not as if, as the boats come over carrying, as they sometimes do, Syrians, we're going to be turning back any boats, are we? Because we don't do that. So Syrians can continue to come over. And meanwhile, it's not as if we're going to be deporting any Syrians who are already in this country claiming asylum. So what does this actually add up to? It adds up to absolutely nothing.
Right.
All we're saying is we're going to take even longer to eventually approve the claims, because on no planet is someone who's currently claiming asylum in the UK because they were persecuted by the Assad regime going to suddenly say, well, actually, there's a new bunch of terrorists in charge over there and I prefer them, and so I'm just going to, I'm going to go back.
Right.
And the lawyers here are not going to say this new bunch of terrorists who we're actually prescribe as a group are way better than the Bashar Assad regime, so these people can definitely go back. So it just doesn't add up to anything, Mike.
Well, no, I think that's right. I said earlier that basically it's the way the system works at the moment. You know, you come here, you claim asylum, they take a piece of paper and put it in a desk somewhere, and then nothing happens for 2 years. So what's the difference between that and suspending it, because you might as well not bother. But Isabel, stay where you are for a second. I'm going to just cross over to Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, who is, I think, down on College Green for us. Chris, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yes, I'm indeed on College Green, shivering in the cold.
Yes, I know. It's not very nice. Sorry about that. Let me ask you what Isabel just said there. She's basically saying, what is the point of this suspension of asylum claims? Because we're not convinced that the system really does anything but suspend the claims anyway, because we know the Home Office only works at the speed of about one asylum claim a week. And since there's 120,000 odd asylum claims going, is suspending anybody making a claim from Syria going to make any difference?
Well, so many of the Syrians here who have claimed asylum will have done so on the basis they feared persecution specifically by former President Assad, and he is no longer there, so the basis of the asylum claim will have disappeared. So it's right they're put on hold. Now, if Syria becomes safe, which I very much hope it does, those Syrians here will of course be able to return to Syria. Many Syrian citizens in Turkey and Lebanon have already chosen to cross the border back into Syria now Assad has gone. But that is the key point. The asylum claims that have been made, most of them, if not even all of them, have been made on the basis that a threat was posed specifically by Assad to the individual, and now Assad has gone.
Right. So if those people do want to go back, do you think we should help them to do so, or do you think we should just let them find their own way?
No, we should definitely actively facilitate those who want to return. And to be honest, if Syria becomes safe, then we should enforce returns as well, because, we're here to offer, protection if people really need it. But if Syria becomes safe, there is then obviously no need to provide protection. And we're trying to get immigration down. And if people don't need protection because Syria has become safe, then they should be either helped to return voluntarily or returned if Syria becomes safe. But the situation obviously is uncertain. It's rapidly changing, so we need to see how that settles.
Yeah, I mean, with the best will in the world, it doesn't look like it's going to be safe for a while, and more concerning perhaps is what the ex-head of MI6 has said this morning, Sir Alex Younger, which is that we might have to be very careful about anybody coming here from Syria, particularly now as they might be people who have been released who were held prisoners as former members of ISIS.
Well, that is critical. People who have been engaging in jihad or have been actively supporting the previous Islamist regime, which operated in parts of Syria, should not be allowed to return if that's at all possible. The previous government took a very robust line on this. There was obviously the case of Shamima Begum, where on the basis of eligibility for joint citizenship, her return was prevented, and the court supported that. So I want to see the new Labour government taking an equivalently strong approach and making sure where possible, people who supported jihadists or Islamists in Syria aren't allowed to return to the UK. That Islamist regime that was around for a while did some terrible things, murdering and raping women and children, and people that supported that we definitely don't want back in the UK.
What do you make of Keir Starmer's trip to the Gulf and his sort of conversations with Mohammed bin Salman and with the United Arab Emirates? Is that going to come to anything?
Well, I'm not sure. It's probably Keir Starmer just doing a lot of talking. And, of course, he spent a lot of time overseas, hasn't he, at a time when, here in the UK, he's been stripping pensioners of their winter fuel payment, including pensioners in poverty. He's been attacking farmers. He's unleashed the biggest tax rise in a generation, £40 billion of extra taxes, which they lied about during the general election. No surprise, his approval rating has plummeted to minus 32%. So I guess it's no surprise he'd rather be somewhere else than dealing with the problems that he's created here.
Big story this morning about Nick Candy, a former Tory donor who's now defected to Reform. Says he's going to be the treasurer for the Reform Party. It's a bit of a blow for you guys, isn't it?
Well, he was actually most recently a Labour supporter. He supported Labour during the election, and he's gone from Labour to Reform. So Reform is the third political party he supported this year. I wonder who he's going to end up supporting next year.
But he was a Tory donor, though. Wouldn't you rather have the money?
Yeah, in the past he was, and of course we welcome support from everybody. But look, it's the Conservatives who are providing the real opposition to Reform. It's the Conservatives who are out on cold mornings like this, holding the Labour government to account for their failings. It's the Conservatives who are working in Parliament. There's only 5 Reform MPs, and of course what we see is where people support Reform, it just lets Labour in with a landslide. We saw that happen sadly in July. So it's the Conservatives who are the real opposition. We're taking the fight to Labour, and people who are conservatively minded, who want to see immigration sorted out, who want to see our taxes come down, we need their support to make sure we can beat Labour. We're the only people that can beat Labour at the next election. And I would say to people who are thinking about Reform to back the Conservatives, because we are the party that will take the fight to Labour. We are the real opposition, and splitting the vote on the right just lets Labour in.
You did put all the taxes up in the first place, though, didn't you?
Well, I mean, obviously taxes because of the pandemic were much higher than I would have liked, that's for sure. And, we're now developing plans to get that down again, including things like welfare reform. But Labour, since getting elected, have taken it to a whole new level. I mean, £40 billion of tax rises in that Rachel Reeves budget, which we oppose. I'll be voting against it later on today in Parliament. I'll be voting against it again in Parliament tomorrow. Those Rachel Reeves tax rises, £40 billion that will hit farmers. They're going to hit old people. They're going to hit working people, they're going to hit businesses, taking the tax burden to the highest level in history. That is too high. It's going to damage the economy. It's causing jobs to be lost. And according to the independent OBR, it's going to cause working people to have lower incomes as well. It is a terrible budget, and I'll be voting against it today and again tomorrow.
All right, Chris, thanks very much indeed.